I had been with my partner for over 3 years. We met in college, and from the moment we started dating, everything just felt right. We were in a stable, loving relationship. There was this unspoken trust between us, and I thought nothing could ever break that bond. Our relationship was far from perfect, like any other, but we worked through everything together, never letting small issues get in the way. I honestly believed that we were one of those couples who would make it through anything. A few months ago, we decided to take a vacation together. Both of us had been working nonstop, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity to get away, recharge, and just enjoy each other's company. We chose a destination that had always been on our bucket list, a beautiful coastal city known for its crystal clear waters, historic streets, and amazing food. I was beyond excited. The thought of escaping the chaos of daily life and spending uninterrupted time with my partner was exactly what we both needed. We had planned this trip for weeks, talking about all the places we'd visit, the adventures we'd have, and the memories we'd make. It felt like the perfect getaway, the kind of trip that would strengthen our bond even more. The planning itself was an experience. We spent hours deciding on the best hotel, comparing prices, reading reviews, and making sure everything would be perfect. Flights were booked, activities were arranged, and soon we were counting down the days. There was a buzz in the air, a sense of excitement about the trip. But looking back now, there were small signs I didn't pick up on at the time. I remember how my partner's energy started shifting in the days leading up to our departure. They were distant, distracted at times, like their mind wasn't fully there. I thought it was just stress from work or maybe some pre-trip jitters. We'd been so focused on planning, but something about their behavior didn't sit right with me. They'd check their phone more than usual, even when we were supposed to be talking about the trip, and would often glance at the screen in a way that felt secretive. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was overthinking things, but in hindsight, I should have paid more attention to those moments. It wasn't just normal pre-vacation stress, it was something else. Something I couldn't yet understand. We finally arrived at our dream destination, and the excitement was palpable. The moment we stepped off the plane, I felt a sense of relief. This was going to be amazing. The city was more beautiful than we'd imagined. We spent the first day soaking in everything we could, wandering through charming streets, exploring ancient landmarks, tasting delicious food from street vendors. It was everything we had hoped for and more. The energy between us felt great, like we were both exactly where we needed to be. We laughed, we held hands, and everything seemed perfect. But as the days went on, I started to notice something strange. My partner, who I knew to be outgoing and full of life, began to seem distant. At first, I thought it was just the travel fatigue catching up with them. But as the second day unfolded, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We'd visit a museum, for example, and while I was captivated by the exhibits, they barely seemed interested. Instead of taking in the sights, they were often staring at their phone, tapping away at something I couldn't see. Even when we sat down for meals at some incredible local spots, my partner would occasionally glance down at their phone, checking messages or scrolling through social media. It didn't make sense. This was supposed to be our time together, but they seemed to be lost in another world. I tried to push the thought out of my head. I told myself it was just the travel stress. Maybe they were feeling overwhelmed, or perhaps they were just adjusting to being away from home. But it didn't sit right. We had spent so long planning this trip, and I couldn't help but feel like something was slipping through my fingers. At night, when we were supposed to unwind after a long day, my partner would stay up, scrolling through their phone for what felt like hours. I found myself staring at the back of their phone screen, wondering who they were talking to. It wasn't like them to be so secretive, and yet here they were, so absorbed in their phone that it felt like I wasn't even there. I didn't want to make accusations or stir things up, so I kept my thoughts to myself, hoping it was just my imagination. But deep down, I felt a growing sense of discomfort, even though I tried to ignore it. One evening, we decided to treat ourselves to a fancy dinner by the beach. The restaurant was elegant, with soft lighting, a gentle breeze from the ocean, and the sound of waves crashing in the distance. It felt like the perfect setting to celebrate our vacation and our time together. The meal was incredible: fresh seafood, delicious cocktails, and the kind of ambience that made everything feel magical. But as we sat there, something was off. My partner seemed distant, barely participating in the conversation. They kept checking their phone, responding to messages, and barely looked up. I tried to make small talk, but they were more interested in their phone than in the moment we were supposed to be sharing. After dinner, I suggested a walk along the beach. The cool sand between our toes and the sound of the ocean would be a perfect way to end the night, I thought. My partner agreed, but then, out of nowhere, said they needed to make a quick phone call and handed me their phone. Something about that struck me as odd. I didn't think much of it at first, though. I walked down the beach alone, giving them the space to do whatever they needed to do. But the further I walked, the more unsettled I became. The air felt thick, heavy with something I couldn't quite place. After a few minutes, I decided to head back, but as I approached the table where my partner had left their phone, I saw the screen lit up. It was sitting there, unattended, and I couldn't resist the urge to glance at it. My heart sank when I saw the messages on the screen. They were from someone I didn't recognize, but the conversation was unmistakable. Flirtatious comments, private inside jokes, and messages that were suggestive, nothing about it felt innocent. It was clear that my partner was emotionally, and possibly physically, involved with someone else. My chest tightened, and I felt this gut-wrenching wave of shock hit me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think clearly. Everything seemed to slow down as I absorbed what I was seeing, and my mind raced with a million questions. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront them now, or wait until we were back at the hotel? But my instincts were screaming at me to do something, so I marched back to the spot where my partner was still on the phone. I didn't give them the chance to speak before I blurted out, "Who is this person? What's going on?" The denial came instantly. "It's just a friend," they said, a little too quickly. "It's not what it looks like." But even as they said those words, I could see the guilt in their eyes, the nervous shifting, the fidgeting. It was all too much. I had the proof right in front of me, but they still tried to cover it up. "It's nothing," they insisted, but the truth was already hanging in the air between us, impossible to ignore. The moment I saw the truth in my partner's eyes, everything I had believed in shattered. It was like the ground beneath me disappeared, and I was left floating in a void. I felt this wave of betrayal wash over me, something so sharp and cold that it took my breath away. Heartbreak hit me like a freight train, and for a second, I couldn't even process the anger that followed. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. How had I missed the signs? How could the person I trusted more than anyone else do this to me? I felt completely blindsided, as if the ground beneath me had been pulled out, and I was falling into this pit of disbelief. I started to think back, searching for any clues that I had missed. There were so many moments that now seemed like red flags, things I had brushed off at the time. The late nights my partner would stay up, their distracted responses when I asked what they were doing, the sudden disinterest in activities we used to enjoy together. At the time, I told myself they were just stressed or tired. But now, all those little moments seemed like pieces of a puzzle I had refused to see. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted them so completely when they were hiding something so big? The pain of realizing that the person I had built a life with, the person I had shared so much with, had been lying to me all along was unbearable. I kept replaying every moment we had spent together, every laugh, every shared secret, every promise. The good times now felt like a distant memory, tainted by this newfound reality. I had pictured a future with this person. I had imagined us growing old together, traveling the world, building a home. But now, that future seemed like a cruel fantasy. The truth hurt more than I could ever have imagined because it wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about all the history we had shared. Everything felt like a lie, and the person I thought I knew and loved wasn't who I thought they were. The argument between us erupted quickly. I could feel the anger bubbling up, but there was a deep, painful sadness underneath it. I yelled, asking why. Why didn't they just tell me the truth? Why hide it? But their response was full of defensiveness and excuses. It's not a big deal, they insisted. It's just a friend. The more they tried to explain it away, the angrier I got. But I also felt a strange emptiness, the kind of emotional exhaustion that comes when you're trying to confront something that feels insurmountable. I knew this wasn't something we could easily fix. There was a moment of silence between us after the argument, a heavy pause where the words seemed to hang in the air, thick with tension. And in that silence, I was forced to make a choice. Could I forgive them? Could I move past the lies and try to rebuild what we had? Or was this the end? Would I walk away, never to look back, and start over alone? I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal itself or the thought of losing everything we had built together. But deep down, I knew that I couldn't just pretend this wasn't happening. It had broken something in me, and that meant no matter how much I wanted to hold on to the relationship, it might be time to let go. After the confrontation, I made the difficult decision to separate for the rest of the vacation. I needed space to think, to process everything that had happened. The thought of spending one more moment with my partner, who had just shattered my trust, felt impossible. I told them I needed some time alone, and they reluctantly agreed, their face filled with regret. As I walked the streets alone, I tried to clear my mind. I wandered aimlessly, my thoughts constantly swirling around the betrayal. I found a quiet corner in a cafe and sat there for hours, just staring into space. The vacation, which was supposed to be an escape from the stresses of everyday life, had turned into a nightmare. I couldn't even bring myself to enjoy the beautiful surroundings. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what was supposed to be a dream vacation, now tainted by lies. During that time, my partner kept reaching out, apologizing and begging for forgiveness. They promised they'd cut all contact with the other person and do whatever it took to fix things between us. I could hear the desperation in their voice, but I wasn't sure I could ever trust them again. The idea of continuing the relationship felt suffocating, and as much as I wanted to believe in the words they were saying, a part of me knew that trust, once broken, wasn't something that could just be patched up with promises. It was too late for that. When the time came for us to leave, the flight home was unbearably awkward. We sat next to each other, but there was no conversation, no connection. It was as if we were strangers, sharing nothing but the space between us. I felt like I was in a daze, unsure of how to navigate this new version of our reality. The silence on the plane felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I was in shock, processing everything that had happened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. When we finally landed and returned home, it all hit me like a ton of bricks. The life I had known, the relationship I had trusted so completely, was gone. I walked into my apartment, and everything felt different, empty, even. It felt like a ghost of what it used to be. The vacation that had promised so much happiness and adventure had instead become the worst experience of my life. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that everything I had built with that person had crumbled in the span of a few short days. I was left with the painful truth that nothing would ever be the same. After returning home, I knew what I had to do. As much as it hurt, I made the decision to break up with my partner. It wasn't a choice I made lightly, and I spent countless hours questioning myself, wondering if there was any way to salvage what we had. But deep down, I realized I deserved more than someone who could betray me like that. Trust was the foundation of our relationship, and once it was shattered, it became clear that there was no way to rebuild it. The person I had once loved so deeply had shown me that they were capable of hurting me in the worst way possible. I couldn't stay with someone who had broken me so completely. The emotional journey of moving on wasn't easy. I found myself struggling with waves of sadness and anger, and there were days when I didn't know how I was going to get through it. But I knew I had to take care of myself. I started seeing a therapist, someone I could talk to about everything that had happened and what I was going through. Therapy became an important part of my healing process, helping me to understand my emotions and begin the work of letting go. In addition to therapy, I took time for self-care, whether it was through journaling, meditating, or just taking long walks to clear my head. Slowly, I began to rediscover the things that made me feel like me again. I started picking up hobbies I had neglected, diving into books I hadn't read in years, and reconnecting with friends and family who had been there for me all along. They reminded me of who I was before the relationship and how much I had to offer the world. As time passed, I found that I was growing. I was learning lessons from the pain, lessons that I might never have understood if I hadn't gone through this experience. I realized that trust is essential, but it must be earned, and once it's broken, it's not something that can just be fixed with empty promises. The emotional wounds were still there, but with every day that passed, I became stronger. I became more self-aware of my needs and my worth, and I understood that I couldn't let anyone take away my happiness or my peace of mind again. Healing took time, and there were moments when I felt like I wasn't making progress. But looking back, I can see how far I've come. While the situation hurt deeply, I've learned that sometimes you have to prioritize your own happiness above all else. I may have lost someone I thought I would be with forever, but in doing so, I found myself again. And that was the most important part of all. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realize that the betrayal didn't define me. It was, without a doubt, one of the most painful chapters of my life, but it wasn't the end of my story. I chose to learn from it, to grow stronger, and to never let it diminish my sense of self-worth. Moving forward, I've learned that trust is sacred, but it's something that has to be earned, never taken for granted. I'm more aware of who I am, what I need, and what I deserve in a relationship. Though the pain lingered, I didn't let it control me. Instead, I found resilience, and that strength carried me through. For anyone listening who has gone through something similar, I want to encourage you to trust your instincts. Don't settle for a relationship where you feel disrespected, undervalued, or unloved. You deserve more than that. You deserve someone who will honor you, who will stand by you, and who will be honest with you. Trust yourself enough to walk away when it's time, because no matter how hard it may seem in the moment, there's always something better waiting on the other side. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If you've been through something like this, know that you're not alone. Healing takes time, but with each step, you're getting closer to the person you're meant to be. There's hope after heartbreak, and it's never too late to start the journey toward healing. Keep moving forward, keep growing, and remember that your happiness is worth fighting for.